Salem is a small, quiet town in the heart of Massachusetts. It is home to the beautiful Salem port and many quaint shops and attractions that locals and tourists alike find intriguing. But little do some of them know of the hatred, accusations, and mass hysteria that once dismantled the community. This so-called city of peace became a city of chaos. Join us as we revisit these dark days in 1692 to the days of the infamous Salem witch trials. Salem was founded in 1626 by a group of immigrants from Cape Ann. The settlement was originally named Namkiag, but the settlers began to call it Salem, meaning peace, which you will soon find is ironic. In 1628, immigrants from the Massachusetts Bay Colony began to join them. In the late 17th century, Salem, Massachusetts was a small British colony that was divided into two different towns, Salem Town and Salem Village. Salem Town was made of wealthy merchants and was a prosperous port town and traded with London. On the other hand, Salem Village was the complete opposite. It was a poor community filled with Puritan farmers who were barely able to survive because of the infertile, rocky soil. Most of the accused people lived near Ipswich Road, which was the road that separated these two towns. However different these two towns might be, they both shared an extreme fear of the devil and his evil works. The Puritans lived extremely strict, frugal lives, where men dominated. Women had no rights and were expected to obey their husbands and raise children. Women were considered inferior. Attending church was mandatory, and you were considered an outcast if you didn't attend. The Puritans believed they were doing God's work and had to act and punish accordingly. The Puritans were constantly aware of the devil and who he would attack. They believed that women and children were more likely to be seduced by Satan because they believed that women had a tendency to be lustful because of Eve's sin in the Garden of Eden. Let's travel back to these days. In 1692, a group of young girls began to act very strangely by barking like dogs, screaming uncontrollably, and having violent fits. They claimed to be possessed by the devil, bewitched, and after a local physician's careful inspection, finding nothing wrong with them, he diagnosed several teenage girls with this very condition. The accusations made by the girls resulted in brutal trials. As the trials began, Salem was in a state of mass hysteria. Neighbors turned on neighbors, and no one could be trusted because people were so utterly afraid of being accused of witchcraft and being found guilty. In the courtroom, the possessed girls once again threw uncontrollable fits and continued to accuse more and more women of witchcraft. As many as 185 people were accused of witchcraft and thrown in jail by the end of May. Accusations began spreading to Glasgow, Beverly, Lynn, Malden, Amesbury, Vulrica, Marblehead, Boston, Charlestown, and Andover. 19 people were hung, and one was crushed to death by large stones.
These tragic events have affected Salem both positively and negatively. Some of the negative effects include the mass hysteria grew worse if possible, and the Puritans began not to trust even their closest friends. Numerous families were torn apart and broken because of their loved ones had been tried and executed. And for the girls who accused numerous innocent people of being witches were forced to live with the guilt for the rest of their lives. Some of the positive effects include the witch trials helped make Salem the popular tourist destination it is today. Every year, thousands of people would travel to Massachusetts to see the beautiful port city that was once a town filled with witches and fear. Witch trials almost occurred in Andover, Massachusetts, but were halted because of fear of the possible occurrences that happened in the Salem witch trials.
The wildly famous play The Crucible by Arthur Miller written in 1952, was based off the Salem witch trials. Because of the play's popularity, the town became very popular because so many people wanted to explore the setting of this tragic play. The setting of the Crucible has several main locations that played crucial roles. The first location is the witch house. In February 1692, 3 accused women were examined by magistrates Jonathan Corwin and John Hathorne. The second location is Gallows Hill. Gallows Hill was the location of the executions of condemned witches during the Salem witch trials. The traditional route taken by the condemned from the jail to Gallows Hill was through St. Peter Street, down Essex Street, and then through Boston Street to the point of its present intersection with Alborn Street, and from there to the summit of Gallows Hill. The third location is the courthouse. In 1692, the Salem courthouse stood in the middle of Washington Street, just south of its present-day intersection with Lynn Street. It was here that all 19 persons executed as witches were tried and condemned by the Court of Oyer and Terminer. However, the original structure was torn down in 1760. The fourth location is the First Church of Salem, located on Essex Street near the southeast corner of its intersection with Washington Street. In 1692, the meeting house of the First Church stood on this site. On April 11th, Sara Cloyce and John and Elizabeth Proctor were examined there. On the day of her trial, Bridget Bishop Spector reportedly pried up a plank from the meeting house and sent it crashing around. Barely 1 month later, Rebecca Ness was brought back and publicly excommunicated. The fifth location is the meeting house. This structure was located at the intersection of Forest and Hobart Streets. The meeting house was the site of most of the examinations. Here the magistrates interrogated, among others, the notorious witches Sarah Good, Tituba, Martha Corey, and Rebecca Ness. The next location is the prison. It is located near the North River. During the terrible witch hysteria of 1692, there were people scattered in area village jails in Salem Town, Boston, and Cambridge because of the numerous accusations. For most who were awaiting trials, they were held in the Salem dungeon and jail. However, many died. The last location is the old town hall, which still remains in Salem. The second floor was used as a public hall, while the first floor was a public market.
Salem today. Today, Salem is a fairly large seaside town that attracts many tourists each year because of its beautiful location and the witch trials. Today, the town of Salem fully embraces its past. The police cars have witch logos on them, and the local high school's mascot is a witch. Some popular tourist attractions include Gallows Hill. The location of this execution site remains a mystery to this day. In 1867, Charles Wentworth Upham determined that Gallows Hill off Langdon Street is the location of the executions, but admitted that there is no actual evidence to support this conclusion. The Old Burying Point Cemetery located on Charter Street. This cemetery is the oldest burial ground in Salem. It contains famous characters in the Crucible such as Judge Hawthorne, Giles Corey, Martha Corey, Sarah Good, and John Proctor. Next, the Salem Witch Trials Memorial, located on Charter Street. Walking out of this cemetery, you will find the Salem Witch Trials Memorial. Built in 1992, it consists of 20 benches in honor of those condemned. Next, the Witch House, located on 310 Essex Street. This center of accusation still stands at the corner of North and Essex Streets in Salem, providing guided tours and tales of the first witchcraft trials. Next, the Old Town Hall, the house of Max and Danny, and Rope's Mansion, or the House of Allison, are all definite places to visit for fans of the movie Hocus Pocus. Next, the House of Seven Gables, located on 115 Derby Street. The old Turner Mansion was passed down to Nathaniel Hawthorne, hence Nathaniel Hawthorne's novel being named after the household. Placing itself on the National Register of Historic Places, this house is the oldest surviving mansion in New England. Next, the Salem Witch Museum, located on 19.5 North Washington Square. As the museum's website states, this attraction brings you back to 1692 Salem as you experience history as well as the truth behind witchcraft. Peabody Essex Museum, located on 161 Essex Street. This stores 552 original preserved documents pertaining to the witchcraft trials, as well as a spectrum of American art and photographs from all around the world. Next, the Salem Wax Museum, located on 288 Derby Street. This contains London-made wax figures depicting history from the witch trials. Next, the Bewitched statue, located on 235 Essex Street. The Samantha Bewitched statue was donated by TV Land since 2 episodes of the television show were actually filmed in Salem. And lastly, the last attraction is Ye Olde Pepper Candy Company, located on 122 Derby Street. This is America's oldest candy company.